Walk Beyond 2040, and welcome to a very special edition of the Progressive Rock and Metal Album Review Series. And today I'm going to be taking a look at the short and amazing catalogue from one of the finest bands to ever burst onto the scene in the last decade. And they are comprised of some of the biggest and most important names in music history. And this is a band that's, quite frankly, in my opinion, needs no introduction whatsoever. I am talking about, of course, for one and only, American supergroup Flying Colors. And this is part one of a two-part special where I am going to be discussing Flying Colors' entire catalogue of albums. So for part one, I'm going to be discussing all of Flying Colors' studio albums. And for part two, I'm going to be discussing all of Flying Colors' official live albums. So, Flying Colors is comprised of keyboardist Neal Morse from Spock's Beard, Transatlantic, and the Neal Morse Band, drummer Mike Portnoy from Dream Theater, Liquid Tension Experiments, Transatlantic, the Winery Dogs, Metal Allegiance, and Sons of Apollo, and many other great bands. Guitarist Steve Morse from the Steve Morse Band, Dixie Dregs, Deep Purple, and Kansas. Bassist Dave LaRue from Dixie Dregs, the Steve Morse Band, Joe Satriani, and Steve Vai. And singer and guitarist Casey McPherson from Alpha Rev. An amazing collection of talented musicians and a true supergroup. So, Flying Colors was formed officially in 2011, but the roots and seeds can be traced all the way back to 2008, where Evans proposed an idea of putting a band together that combined sophisticated music with complex compositions and virtuosic performances with accessible material and mainstream style of songwriting. Now, a lot of the music of Flying Colours is, of course, very rooted in progressive rock, but it's got lots of catchy harmonies, plenty of pop hooks, and a lot of the songs are quite relatively short, clocking in at around 4 to 6 minutes long. There are a couple of much longer pieces, but Flying Colours is not necessarily what you would call a progressive rock supergroup. This was an attempt to make more commercial music. So, as I said, this is more like pop rock, so to speak. So, while there are progressive rock leanings, this is very much like pop rock meets art rock. So, as I said, there's lots of catchy songs and memorable melodies. The solos are kept to a minimum, although live Flying Colours do stretch it out a little bit more. But ultimately, this is a much more accessible type of band. And in their short existence, Flying Colours released three excellent studio albums. And, to actually hear five musicians of this caliber in one band is quite a treat because, obviously, as we all know, Neal Morse and Mike Portnoy go a long way back and they have done so much incredible music together and they are just magic. Anytime you have Neal Morse and Mike Portnoy in the same band, you know it's going to be quite an amazing treat. Steve Morse, one of the greatest guitarists of all time. He's seen it all, done it all, and he's done every style of music you can imagine. Dave LaRue, one of the top bass players in the world. He's played with just about everyone. So those four guys alone, combined, have a humongous pedigree. Now, Casey McPherson, he was the least known of the five. He didn't have a big pedigree like the other four, musicians in Flying Colors. But what Casey McPherson brings to the table is he's a very talented and charismatic frontman. He's got an amazing singing voice. He's a very accomplished guitarist in his own right, and he matches up really well with these heavyweights. Any guy who can stand toe to toe and trade guitar licks with a guitar hero like Steve Morse deserves respect. And Casey McPherson not only holds his own with a godlike Steve Morse, but he thrives. So these guys, when they get together, it's magic. And, you know, this is a band that they are our supergroup, but they're not really what you would call your progressive rock style of supergroup. As I said, they're more like a pop rock slash art rock band. And Casey McPherson's very soothing and catchy singing voice is really appealing and really is the sound of Flying Colors. So he's a really amazing singer. And as I said, he was the least known, but he turned out to be a really great fit for the band. So, for today's special edition, which is part one of a two-part special, I'm going to be discussing all of Flying Colours' albums, which is a total of 3 studio recordings. And as always, I'm going to be talking about each album individually, and I'll be choosing which one I think is the best one. Not an easy challenge. I've just got finished listening to this incredible trilogy. There is no bad album in this short catalogue. Any of these albums could be a number one or an all-time favourite because the music is excellent, it's well produced, great playing, catchy harmonies, unbelievable vocals, you name it. Flying Colours have got it all. And when you look at the names, as I mentioned earlier, that are in this band, you know you're going to get the absolute best. And I enjoyed listening to Flying Colours albums. There is some terrific material, in my opinion. So we're going to start with the first album, and this one came out in 2012, and it's a self-titled album, and this one is simply called Flying Colors. So this is the band's first album, and it's really enjoyable. Probably the most commercial of the trilogy, but still very enjoyable. There's some really good material on this album. Casey McPherson, he is on top form both vocally and musically. Steve Morse, he's always on top form and he delivers some unbelievable guitar playing. Dave LaRue, just a rock solid bass player and the perfect guy to have in any situation. He's just absolutely amazing. Mike Portnoy, very restrained in his drumming. He takes more of a laid back approach, but he still brings that classic power style of playing that we all know and love from his years of playing with just about everyone. And he's on fine form. And Neal Morse, a real powerhouse, a great singer, and an amazing keyboardist. He takes more of a backseat here. He still delivers lots of tasty playing, but he's more in the background, so he's not as bombastic and upfront as he normally would be in Spock's Beard or with Transatlantic. So he takes more of a background role, but he still gets plenty of soloing in, and he's an incredible musician. And all 5 guys are just on top form and sound really tight. No weak links at all. And top to bottom, this album is incredibly strong. And as I said, it's probably the most commercial of the 3 albums, but still very enjoyable. Still got some really good songs. So we've got the very catchy Blue Ocean, which is kind of like more of their opener for a lot of their live shows. Very enjoyable. Shoulda, Coulda, Woulda, just a badass track. Kayla is great. The Storm is just absolutely catchy. Forever and a Days is great. Love is What I'm Waiting For is brilliant. Everything Changes is absolutely amazing. Better Than Walking Away, fantastic. All Falls Down is great. Fall in My Heart is great. And we've got the 12-minute epic closer, Infinite Fire. But wow, top to bottom, lots of great songs, very accessible, very commercial, plenty of pop hooks, but some incredible music. And Casey McPherson, considering that he's the least known of these five musicians, he really holds his own with these heavyweights, and he is just an amazing singer, and he's the perfect fit. I can't really think of any singer who could probably perform these songs but him. He just fits like a glove, and he works really well with all of these guys. So standout tracks for me are Blue Ocean, Shoulda, Coulda, Woulda, The Storm, Forever in a Daze, Better Than Walking Away, All Falls Down, Everything Changes, and Infinite Fire. But no bad song here at all. Top to bottom, every song is excellent. And what a debut! Just a fantastic debut, very strong and really enjoyable and very appealing, in my opinion. So there you have it, the self-titled album, Flying Colors, very enjoyable and probably the most commercial of the trilogy. Very enjoyable, love it. So we move on to the next album, and this one came out in 2014, and this one is called Second Nature. So this is Flying Colors' follow-up from their self-titled debut album, and Second Nature is a lot more heavier and more rooted in the prog style of music, whereas the self-titled album was a lot more commercial and a lot more poppier. Second Nature still has a lot of those catchy pop hooks, but you can see now that the guys really go into their prog roots, and there's a lot more epic songs, but still quite on the laid back side. Maybe not as laid back as the first album, but still really good. All five musicians are on top form, and there's some tremendous songs on here. And I probably like this album maybe a little bit more than the first album. Not saying I dislike the first album. The first album was really good. It's got a lot of my favorite songs on there, but it was a very commercial album. But with Second Nature, it's less commercial and more proggy, and I like it. And when you've got Neal Morse and Mike Portnoy in the band, you know exactly where it's going to go. You know how it's going to sound, and you've got two heavyweights in Steve Morse and Dave LaRue. They bring more of the fusion side of things, and then you've got Casey McPherson, who is really more of a pop guy with rock leanings. And you put all five together and you get Second Nature. It just works so well. And it's a very well balanced album. All five guys are showcased and everyone brings their A game and they're on top form. So we've got the 12-minute opener, Open Up Your Eyes, which is excellent. Mask Machine is very catchy and very enjoyable. Bombs Away is great. The Fury of My Love is excellent. A Place in Your World is very accessible and very memorable. Lost Without You is very short and very sweet. One Love Forever, very enjoyable. Peaceful Harbour is great. And then we got the three-part suite, 11-minute epic Cosmic Symphony. So part one, we've got Still Life of the World, Searching for the Air, and Pound for Pound. So a lot more longer songs compared to the first one, where they had less longer songs and more shorter pieces. For Second Nature, much more longer pieces, but still really enjoyable. So the standout tracks for me are Open Up Your Eyes, Mask Machine, The Fury of My Love, Lost Without You, Peaceful Harbour, and Cosmic Symphony. But really enjoyable album and lots of tasty playing from Steve Morse and Dave LaRue. Powerful drumming from Mike Portnoy and bombastic keyboard work from Neal Morse. And Casey McPherson, just an incredible singer. He's on top vocal form. And as I said earlier, anyone who can hold their own with these guys deserves respect. And Casey McPherson, from the first moments I heard him, he really earned my respect. He really held his own and thrived with these guys and matched up very, very well. So there you have it. Second Nature, a much more proggier album than the self-titled album, but still really enjoyable. So there you have it. Second Nature, excellent album. So we move on to the next album, and this one came out in 2019, and this one is called Third Degree. So Third Degree is the third album from Flying Colours, and it continues the trend that they started with Second Nature. So Third Degree is a much more proggier album, but with plenty of pop hooks and catchy melodies and lots of accessible material and more longer pieces as well. So whereas the self-titled album had more shorter songs and less epics, Second Nature had a couple of longer songs, and that continues on with Third Degree. So there's lots of longer tracks, bit more than the last one, but still got plenty of great songs to get your teeth into. And all five musicians really, in their short existence with their third album, really started to hit their peak with this one. And it's just magic. I think what happened with Flying Colours is they more or less decided that, you know what, we're not a commercial band. Let's just make the kind of album we want to make. But as I said, it's not as bombastic as you would have with a band like Transatlantic or Dream Theater or any of those kind of bands. It's still quite a laid back affair, but there's still plenty of rocky pieces to get your teeth into. And if you buy the special edition of Third Degree, you get a bonus disc which has got a bonus track called Waiting for the Sun and some instrumental alternative versions of some of these tracks. So we've got The Lost Inside, which is a really good opener. More is great. Cadence is great. Guardian is excellent. Last Train Home is great. Nemo is great. You Are Not Alone is great. And Love Letter is great. And we've got the epic Cruel. But top to bottom, very enjoyable and a very strong album. As all of these albums are, they're all strong. This is a very epic trilogy. You can't go wrong with any of these albums, and they're all great. No weak albums at all. As I said at the beginning, any of these albums could be a number one or an all-time favorite. That's how strong these albums are. And when you've got five musicians of this caliber, you're getting the absolute best. So standout tracks for me are The Lost Inside, Guardian, Last Train Home, You Are Not Alone, and Cruel. But top to bottom, a very strong album, and this would be the last Flying Colours album that we would get, as the band would dissolve and everyone would go off and do their own thing. So you never know, Flying Colours could get back together and do another album. So the door is wide open for an album number four, but we'll see really. But if this is the final album, what a way to go out. Just an excellent album, in my opinion. So there you have it. Third Degree, another great album from Flying Colours, and what a way to close out a remarkable trilogy. Absolutely love it. So, which Flying Colours album do I think is the best one? Well, as I said at the beginning, we've only got three albums, and after listening to this incredible trilogy, there are no bad albums in this catalogue. Any of these albums could be a number one or an all time favourite, and I really enjoyed listening to all three albums. But if I had to choose one which I feel is the best one, I will go with Third Degree, because Third Degree for me was Flying Colours reaching their peak, They were really starting to hit their stride, and I feel they never sounded better than they did on this one. And everybody just brought their A game. It was more of a continuation of Second Nature, which was a proggier album. But with Third Degree, they really fully embraced their prog roots and just delivered more epics, but still kept it more accessible and more in the pop realm. But just an incredible album, and really enjoyed this one a lot the most. I just thought this was a fantastic album. Not taking anything away from the other two, they're great, but I feel that with Third Degree, this was a very special album. And if this is indeed Flying Colours' last album, because they have kind of left the door wide open for a fourth album, but if this is the last one, what a way to close out the trilogy. Just an amazing album, and what a closer, and what a high note to go out on, in my opinion. Just an unbelievable album. So there you have it. Third Degree, the one that I consider to be the best Flying Colours album of all time. Absolutely love it. Fantastic album. So that's going to be it from me. I'm going to wrap this up now. What's your favourite Flying Colours album? Is it the self titled album, Second Nature, or Third Degree? There's no right or wrong answer. We all have our favourite albums. You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below. And I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Progressive Rock and Metal album review series, where I will be back with part two of this two-part special, where I'm going to be discussing all of Flying Colours' official live albums. So make sure you don't miss that. So until next time, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.